Oh, namaste. Hello, dear friend. There's a mosquito on my forehead. The Dharma. It speaks for itself, for sure. I think the best representation of it I found for it recently is everything but crickets. The sound of crickets, or cicadas, or even birds. Any just group of small live things that make sound. Not even live things, all things. Because I work in a warehouse and I hear the beeps and I hear the buzzes and I hear the things and I'm like, oh shit, it's the Dharma. It's all things. But when you listen to the crickets, number one, first you realize there's those ones, right? That's the ones you hear. Those might be cicadas. I don't know shit about shit. But so you hear that, and then you realize, oh man, this whole time there's been the just background ones, and then there's like different frequencies of the background ones. And what's happening is that each little individual cricket is making its own sound, its own way, as it wants to in that moment. And there's communication, and it's just perfect harmony. And so what he's saying is, I am. Woo! He's just constantly broadcasting, I am the self. Right here, right now. That's one interpretation, obviously. When he's in the moment, he's in that moment being a cricket. That's why he's a cricket. So he's not thinking about the here and the now, he's thinking about cricket. But he is the here and the now, and that's the best part. And so anyway, that's one of them. But there's like thousands of them everywhere, especially when you come into like nature places. But even like just out in your front lawn, I don't know about anywhere except where I live, but where I live, you go outside, crickets. And you start to hear, like, if you listen long enough, you hear the pulsating waves, and it's a really good demonstration of just how things, I would say fractals, which is going to be a reoccurring theme, naturally. But it's because you hear, like, out of all of that, each individual cricket saying, I am this, and then they create this thing. It's just this, it's the Dharma. It is what is happening at all times. It is everything. And if you understand, then you understand. And if you don't, then I can't explain it. It's Dharma. So I've also thought about recently how all things that exist, and I would define existence as exist, like they have undergone the formality of actually happening, in Whitehead's terms. Thank you, Terence McKenna. Actually occurring, I think that was it. But anyway, so something has to be real. And if it is real, it exists. Like if it is come into existence, because this is existence, it's the present moment. And so all things that come into existence, and so they're born in existence. Otherwise, they're not born, so they don't exist. Exist, the specific term. They exist on some finer level of being, and then even that, something was born. And even like eternal truths, that which they coexist with, and the context they exist in, the dharma. It's whatever. It's who am I? This. Hello, this. You are not me. Who am I? This. Hello, this. You are not me. So, all things that are born must die. And so if they exist, and all things that exist must have been born, therefore will die. Or at very least, if it exists right now, it has to have existed in the past. And so to be here today, you had to be here yesterday. To be here yesterday, I had to be born on October 25th, 2001. In order for that to happen, 9 months earlier, my parents had to have sex. In order for that to happen, my parents have to have met. In order for that to happen, my parents had to have been born. In order for that to have happened, their parents needed to have sex, and it goes on and on and on and on until the very... And then think about it. Where does it go? Does it go back to all of human ancestry? So, like, let's say you believe in Adam and Eve. And so, does it go back to there? Or does it go back... Or let's say you don't believe in that. And so you believe all life developed from, like, single-celled organisms. So what you are admitting is that tree right there is your brother and sister. And so is every single person. And so is every single animal and bug and living sentient being at all. Because all life spawned from the same thing. So is that what you're telling me? Or does it go even back further than that? To the very Big Bang. To where every single thing was set in motion. And it's like basically God he decided to play pool one day and he broke the triangle, and boom, since that it's just some automatic unfolding and everything falls into the pockets the right way because he's God. Or just in general. Aside from Jacob's mind version of it. The universe started. It had a Big Bang. It will ultimately dissipate into a heat death. We are in the present moment. In order to be in the present moment, we had to have been born just like this universe. And so what I'm demonstrating is that there is something, and what I'm stating right now, is that there is something that is before, eternally before, and there's something that is eternally after. Why? Because it was before. And so, since this exists on its own before, it is unaffected by what happens during. And so, when during comes, it's born, it matures, it's born, it matures, I don't know. I know this. I've memorized this. Anyway, it's born, it develops, it matures, it decays, and then it dies. That. All things do that, just like, because, why? Because one of the laws of thermodynamics is that entropy increases over time. And so, since your body is in the universe, it will naturally do the same thing. It has more chance of getting harsh diseases. Just more in general, longer time goes on, the more chances you have to die. And then also at a certain time, for some reason, your body just decays. There's a scientific reason that it's known. I do not know it, but I would like to. I will at some point, probably. And so what I'm demonstrating is that there is something which is emptier than zero, and it is more vast or beyond infinity. And the way I like to think of infinity, given that specific thing, is that you have absolutely nothing. If you have anything, then you have a theoretical infinite. But with that infinite comes a negative infinite, because positive and negative spawn into existence at the same time. And just because the fact that you can think about it makes it viable for thought. And so there is nothing, there is something, there's infinity, there is negative infinity. There's the distance between negative infinity and positive infinity, which is defined as one unit, which can be made an infinite set of, which can in turn have a negative infinite set of, and the zero is always the same, and that which lies behind the zero is always the same. And what is it? The Dharma. And since it was before the zero, because zero is like nothing. Nothing is no thing. No thing, you can even see it linguistically, depends on there being a thing. Otherwise, there would be no reason to state nothing in the first place. And so, something even emptier than that, void. Okay, void exists in relation to non-void, and therefore, no. Because you can't, because everything that exists also exists as more than one thing. I don't know why, but it's always like this. It's always the meeting of two things. The most basic example is, in order for a person to be born, two people have to have sex. You have to have an egg and you have to have a sperm cell. And that makes the person. And voila, all things are like this, it seems, because time and space are intertangled. The other one that I was already and started this tangent, they're intertangled. And so all things that exist come in pairs, kind of, or unify something. And then the last, because what I'm doing is there's this thing at the center, and it's the most important thing, and then I'm drawing a linguistic mandala off of that. And so bear with me. These all connect with each other. You just gotta, I don't know. But yeah, so there's the eternal past and there's the eternal future. And so what separates the past and the future? Because realistically, there is no difference except the present moment. And the present moment is life. It is a process. It is change. It is... And now I should probably, before I continue with that, I should probably reveal the thing. So what is finer than, emptier than zero and beyond infinity? The Dharma. The Dharma. What was before the universe and what will persist after the universe? The Dharma. And then I would say everything that flows out of the Dharma is the Tao. And this is on my own personal categorization of the language. It comes from the Tao line. The great Tao flows both to the left and to the right. It loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. And so I view the Tao as the dynamic expression and the Dharma as the eternal self in Ramana Maharshi. It's so beautiful. And so all things that flow from the Dharma are of the Tao, which I would say carries with it Buddha nature. And from that, all things are a natural process. Because everything spawns from that which is. Naturally, if you meditate on it long enough. And then, so everything that comes out of the Dharma is a natural process. Just because natural comes from nature, process, it's a happening. Because otherwise, then it's just the Dharma. And then I can see it as this yin-yang type of dance thing where it goes from Dharma, goes through the process, becoming Tao. And then it's the eternal Tao. And then you perform your Dharma. You chop wood and you carry your buckets. And so then you become one with the Dharma, and it's all the Dharma. And so then the Tao happens. And then everything's like that. See, I didn't even think about that one until this very moment. And you watched it happen. It's all like that. You just got to look deeply in. Everything is interconnected. Everything's intertangled. And why? Because it has to be yin and yang, or else it's all black, and therefore there's no black because there's nothing other than black. There's not even the possibility of something other than black. Because you have already stated that there is only black, and therefore it's not black, it's the color that is, but you don't even have the categorization for color because nothing exists. Well, no other colors exist. You could have matter within black, and it's all black, and so you develop some sort of like, I don't know, like, what's the thing bats do? Supersonic? No. Echolocation. You could develop some sort of echolocation type of thing, send a light beam, but you can't have light. You've already stated no light. And same with light. If you have eternally light, there is no form. There is no... And my favorite one is form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. That which is form is emptiness. That which is emptiness form. Loss describes both of these kind of inadvertently when he talks about how you could have the background is white, and so the foreground is black. And so that's like when you have a page and you've written a bunch of words. But for example, if you're drawing a picture and it's not like a colored in really good picture, like if you draw a circle, getting real basic, if you draw a circle, the circle is the thing inside of the black, and therefore like the black is the boundary. And then it could also just be as simple as you have a black background. You can only see if you write on white, write with white utensil. But yeah, so everything comes in pairs, because otherwise it's that which is, and therefore it doesn't exist. And so I see life, life would be that which is the Tao. It would be that which goes forth. And so there's this way of thinking of things that instead of A happened, so B happened, so C. A happened, so B had to happen. So A happened, so B happened, so C happened, so D happened. But there's another way of thinking about it. D happened. Well, D had to happen. Therefore, A happened. Oh, therefore, C had to happen. Therefore, B had to happen. Therefore, A had to happen. A, B, C, D? Yes. So, like, it's instead of sequentially unfolding like this, it could be causally related, or vice versa. And with all with all pure dualities, I don't know, there is the ability that you can interchange them. They can play each other's parts, and they do play each other's parts when you stop thinking inside of the specific box in which they play their parts. And it's this eternal dance, and everything's beautiful. It really is. And so life, you could see it as the thing that sprung forth from the eternal Dharma, which created the Big Bang, which will... that happened, and then that momentum is carried on through life today. This is Terence McKenna's bit. It's the Big Bang happens. This is this is Terence McKenna's bit. I was gonna say it's the archaic revival, but not really. I listen to a lot of Terence McKenna. You should too. Anyway, I'm not. So the Big Bang happened, and out of the Big Bang you have this like chemical soup, and then the chemical soup forms into stars, which at the center have fusion, and they create complex chemicals for even cooler chemical soup. And that already is the first iteration of the process of what happens, because it goes from entropy and novelty. These are a duality, and this is where I start to use my own mind based off of what Terence McKenna says. But so entropy in the universe, in this mechanical universe, in this physical plane, whatever, entropy increases. But the process of life, novelty increases over time. But the entropy increases over time. But in life, novelty increases over time. And it's beautiful because the thing that happens right now sets the stage for the next thing to happen, which sets the stage for the next thing to happen. So we're not all starting just from the Dharma. Some people are born in wealthy classes. Some people are born in poor classes. Like, that's how it is. It's not and why? Because there's an insane amount of complexity, because the system has been going on for 13 billion years, complexifying and adding. And so you have fusion, and then when you get things like water and carbon on like a planet in the Goldilocks zone called Earth, you get plants. Well, you get life, and life develops into all of its whatever it did. And so the way I think about it is the time to get from single-celled organisms to dinosaurs to humans, to like, just to give you, it's not just like, we evolved. No, dinosaurs lived for millions upon millions of years. They reigned. They didn't live for that long. But we haven't nowhere near that. 2021, my bad. 2021. Listen, man, the Mayans had it backwards. It wasn't 12, it was 21. That's when everything ends. But then they're 1 year late. Anyway. So yeah, that way of seeing it is, this is all happening for and you can even see that from humans, we're developing originally tools. That was the first technology, and then from there we went all the way into the Industrial Revolution, and then now we're in the technological revolution. We're at the dawn of AI, and there is no denying that existence. You can't. It is, and that is like, I don't know who says it. It might be Terence McKenna, but it might be, I don't think it's Elon Musk. But basically, humans are the sex organs for technology. Like, we basically existed. Technology was thing D. Humans were only thing C, and we cannot get that through our ego, because the ego doesn't like that. Something else in control in our male-dominant culture? What are you talking about? No, never. Not in 2 trillion years. Not even then. Incorrect is happening right now at this very moment. Along with space travel, along with the ability to modify genetics, along with insert scientific revolution here, along with all the political movements, along with all of the thought movements, along with, and this is the time that we are in. And so, anyway. So, from one perspective, what happens is, why do things exist? And it's to go through the process of life, where it starts out, I don't know, man. because it all exists in many levels. And a really good, easy way of demonstrating this is if you have a point, you could make that point a line, and then out of that line, or you can make a circle, and then if you meet two circles wherein the diameter and the radius, the center point and the circumference, there we go. The distance between the center point and the circumference, you make it another circle exactly like it, wherein the circumference is the second circle's center point. And so you have two circles, and then that process can repeat itself. And so you just get that. And then also it creates a double helix, which is the shape of an eyeball. It's just point, line, point, line, point, line, point, line, point. And so, or like, zoo, woo, woo. And so they go, it's the shape of DNA. But that, I don't remember why I was talking about double helix. I'm going to go back to the Dharma though. Bird. All of that being said, I would like to talk about Jesus. Yay! I like Jesus a lot. Jesus is my favorite. Enter Jesus. I've been reading the Bible for like 4 months now. And I'm in Acts. I had just got to St. Paul. I'm pretty sure St. Paul and Paul are the same person. Anyway, yeah, I'm in Acts. I just got to where God was like, no eyes. Eyes. No, that's not what happened at all. No faith. Faith. Boom. Sorry. So, I've read through from Genesis all the way to the New Testament, which I've never done in my life before. And when I want to talk about it. Jesus. All of it is for Jesus. We can talk about that some other time. Jesus. When I got to the Gospels, I was like an 8-year-old girl who just got free tickets to a Justin Bieber concert. I don't know. Because the whole thing, it doesn't even mention him by name until the angel comes to Mary. Maybe it does. I think like maybe once or something. I don't know. But it doesn't really say it until you get to the angel visiting Mary and saying, hey, name your kid Jesus, which is the gospel. And so, And then I want to talk about the Buddha. Because Christianity and discipleship are different. I am a disciple. Someone who goes to church on Sundays and does their thing and like kind of gets God out of the way. Like they signed up for that. That's their personal relationship with God. I went through that too. Everyone does, especially as kids who like sitting and listening to a sermon. But then some of us like really the seeds are watered. And it grows into full on, and so there's a fundamental difference. And so, but the problem is, for most of history, our history, it's been shaped by Christianity, but it's not Christianity. It is the Christianity that put Jesus on the cross in the first place. Because if you will read the thing, it is the high religious people who put Jesus on the cross, and all of the people who were against him were actually the religious elites who they were Jewish. They had practiced since they were babies. They were high, holy, and perfect, and they were supposed to lead the people. What that means is they had control over the people. And then Jesus comes along, this little guy from Nazareth, and then he's just blowing the whole shit to shreds. And also, I mean, and you can look at it from their perspective. It's beautiful, because if you've read the laws, and also you put yourself into the perspective of someone who has grown up on this literature, thought about it a certain way, and they think, I am the good guy that is holding this tradition true, the book of Moses. I am the teacher of this. And so there's purity and there's not purity. But if you understand the patterns of the Israelites, you understand that it is more not purity than purity. So sadly, at least in this physical incarnation existence, whatever. But yeah, so then, and so that is what we took. Because even up until recently, the Old Testament was still more important than the New Testament. That, I don't know the movement where that happened, but I am aware that that's a recent phenomenon. It wasn't always all about Jesus. It was, but it was more about, I don't know, what we all think about when we think of, what outsiders think about when they think of the Catholic Church or the Protestant or all these high class church things. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Christianity is a male dominant culture thing. It is something that they took and ran with. It is one of the only things that don't even have a female counterpart, which is already off balance, which Terence McKenna has been, he is really feminist, more feminist than I thought he was, and I'm so proud. I am very happy, because, yes. And so, this thought has ruled our minds for, however long, and so in order to dig ourselves out of that, because what Christianity isn't what, in people's eyes, isn't what discipleship is. And even in real life, as I just kind of demonstrated, there's a difference. And when you're not in it, but you say you're in it, that is actually the commandment about saying God's name in vain. It's not about not saying God damn it. Although, don't say God damn it. It's about not bearing his name, saying, I come in the name of God. I come in Yahweh. I'm a Jesus human. But then you live the life of a sinner, and you take pride in your things, and then you don't live it out. And that's my sermon. But when you don't do that, you still say, I am Jesus human, what you do is you create a bad image in the other person's mind. I had a friend who found out that they were bisexual at a young age, and they were criticized by their Christian friends, and to the point to where basically they were brought on stage and embarrassed because the Christian church was trying to save them. And that's not how that works. And that's what Christianity has become and is in the public mind. And from a political standpoint, that's what it is. And so if you're not in it, then what I'm trying to say is Buddhism is the balance for me. I feel like there should, because it at least brings you back to home, to what it's really about, rather than, and then also, but if you think about Buddhism as a religion as opposed to a practice, then you run into the same problem. So don't religify it, practice it. Go back to the breath right now. Listen closely. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, which is a name. When practicing deeply the Prajnaparamita, which is a name, perceives that, which the name means the wisdom that brings one to the other shore, something to that extent. When practicing deeply the Prajnaparamita, perceives that all 5 shastras, which are books, knowledge books, are empty and is saved from all suffering and distress. Shariputra, which is the name of a disciple. Bodhisattva is an enlightened being because at the beginning it's Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. I'm not going to do a whole commentary. I'm just in the beginning because there's a lot of stuff to explain. So I'm going to stop explaining. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is an enlightened being who comes back to help others get enlightened, basically. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deeply the Prajnaparamita, perceives that all 5 shastras are empty and is saved from all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. That which is form is emptiness, and that which is emptiness form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They do not appear or disappear, are not tainted or pure, do not increase or decrease. Therefore, in emptiness, no form, no feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. No eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so forth until no realm of mind consciousness, no ignorance and also no extinction of it, and so forth until no old age and death, and also no extinction of them. No suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path, no cognition. Also no obtainment with nothing to obtain. The Bodhisattva depends on Prajnaparamita, and his mind is of no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. Far apart from every perverted view, he dwells in nirvana, in the 3 worlds of Bodhi, sleep, and the Prajnaparamita, and obtains a Guttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore know that Prajnaparamita is the great transcendent mantra, is the great bright mantra, is the utmost mantra, is the supreme mantra, which is able to relieve all suffering and distress, and is true, not false. So proclaim the Prajnaparamita mantra. Proclaim the mantra which says, Gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi swaha. 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 Going, going, going beyond, going thoroughly beyond, always becoming the Buddha. Going, going, going beyond, going thoroughly beyond, always becoming the Buddha. And so on and so forth. Back to Jesus. What you find when you do that is the very core of everything that is behind the universe, basically. Because if you think about the universe as a 2-dimensional plane, then you can, like, it's a sheet of paper, and so you can put one behind it, and it's like this thing, it observes it, but it's completely unaffected by that, and that is what you are. It is what all things are, by premise that they exist, because if they exist, they came into existence. Existence is samsara. meaning all things decay, meaning all suffering, which is means for practicing dharma. And one should practice now and not later, because if they're not practicing now, then they weren't practicing before. And before, now is later. And if now is now, and you are not practicing dharma, then you will not be practicing dharma next time. At very least, plant the seeds so you can come back and water them. But if the seeds aren't into the ground, then there's nothing you can even water later. And the seeds might be far from you, because when you want them, you're probably going through a time of hardship, at which point you are doing something for self-gratification. Misidentifying the self, the true self, that all things come from, and to where all things go back to, the Dharma. You mistake that for the ego. I mistake that for the ego. I am the ego. But before that, I am. And so we identify in this way with our thinking mind. And our thinking mind wants things. It wants sense gratification. It wants this and that. But Jesus says that drink from this water and you will be thirsty again, samsara. But truly I say what I give to you. You will have a well that never runs dry. I am the living water, something to that extent. I have not memorized everything Jesus has said yet. Something to that extent. And what he's talking about is how I don't know whether the kingdom of heaven is a physical place. I believe that it is. But nirvana and that are not the same thing. But the internal experience, I would imagine, is either the same or very similar. I would imagine that in heaven you experience nirvana, but nirvana is not limited to heaven. In fact, if you, with this very step, arrive at the here and now, and you arrive, and you arrive, and you arrive, with each step, this is the Pure Land of the Buddha. This becomes God's creation, because it is God's creation, by definition, because God is one with the Dharma. God would be seen as that which flows forth, and this is separate from the class of entity called being, because I would say that, even that, I don't know. Because if you look at each God from its own perspective, okay, yeah, because I'm deep in Christian right now. Christian Buddhist practice, that's, bam, I'm locked in. And so stuff like, even like Hinduism, which when I was real into Ram Dass just a few months ago, that was like, woo! But like now, that's kind of weird. Like, I would not bow to Hanuman, I'm sorry. Not really. But that's incorrect, because if Hanuman was standing right here, I would understand that Hanuman is just as much Hanuman as Jesus is Jesus. And just because mine is Jesus doesn't mean I can't show respect with. And it's the thing about don't lust. And Ram Dass talks about how it's not about wanting sexual attention. That is normal. It's about not forgetting God in it, not thinking that this woman is just an object that you can fuck. It is a person, a being, just like you. And you guys, and you too, can come into the one in this holy matrimony. And it's beautiful. But if you forget that and you're lost in your sexual desire, it goes back to the original thing, which is, this is basically what defines a sinner, what defines a fool. It is someone that mistakes the ego for the pure self. The main difference is the ego is born in samsara, so it needs to survive, where the self is unchanging. The self is neither born nor will ever die, and therefore does not have to worry, does not have to breathe because it doesn't have a body to breathe with. It doesn't have to eat, it doesn't have to sleep, it doesn't have to show up, it doesn't have to run away, it doesn't have to do anything. It just is everything. And so, practicing Dharma, familiarizing yourself with that, just being purely in nature, going back to the self, because the reason the self is so different is because it is the lens through which you see the world when you identify with the ego. And if you think that I am this body, then you are the ego. If you think I am anything, ego. Just a different form. And so the key is to go back and just be the way, and be able to subject yourself. And this is where it goes in my own personal trip. But being able to subject yourself to the Dharma for as long as possible, like deep meditation on a mountain for 30 days, for like 3 months, I don't know, 30 days, 3 months, 3 years, 3 lifetimes, who knows? But just being able, and then familiarizing yourself in that way, because the more you do, the more in touch you are with the universe, the more open your heart is, the less that you're an asshole, the more happy you are, the more you want to give rather than take. And that is why it is important to have things like upayas. And an upaya is something that brings you to the oneness. And some people, like a child's upaya, may be candy, because it brings them to the space where there is sweetness in their mouth and they can run everywhere freely. And so, and an upaya can be sex, an upaya can be your guru, an upaya can be this hacky sack. An upaya could be listening to the crickets. It could be meditation. The thing that reminds you that it's not all how it appears to be, and that it is actually all just the I am. And so it's important to have those, but it's also important to understand that that is for the ego to realize the self, and not for the ego to serve the self, because the self and myself are different. And the ego serves myself as opposed to the self. And the self is common through all of us. That is why when you realize this, compassion arises naturally. And for people like Jesus, for gods like Jesus, because I really do fully believe that the Dharma was Jesus' heart. He is that which is consistent upon all things. He is unchanging. He is the loving face of God. And so for people like Jesus, that understanding can be so deep that he's willing to undergo intense suffering and die on a cross for the idea that all people can be liberated. And that's one way of saying it. One way of saying it. Or to realize that liberation is our natural state. We are mukti, as Ramana Maharshi would say. And realizing this deepens your compassion. and it turns you into, you realize that you are an empty vessel, that your body exists apart from you. You exist apart from your body, and therefore, and what you are made of is like water poured into a vessel, consciousness. Consciousness poured into a body, water poured into a vessel. You are that, and that is everything and everywhere. So as soon as you leave, boom, what comes in to replace it? If you don't replace it, if you just sit with the breath and see what happens, forever, every single action you ever perform, no, you didn't perform it. It was performed by the Dharma. Making this your true experience is one goal of life. Because I would say that brings you into the other side of existence. Like before existence, there's the past, there's the state of chaos, which is turned into a state of order via the back chaos, order. So it's like a double yin yang. And so you go from chaos, and then it's born into existence. And remember, this existence is samsara, so everything decays. But the way it is born as... No. So samsara is chaos, and it exists on its own. And nirvana and heaven, they exist on their own. And then there is earth, which is the intertangled state of both of them. And this is why you have animals, and like that is why you have variant levels of consciousness. Animals and humans. There's a fundamental difference, and it is a real difference, but it's not a real difference because we all come from the same place. And that's going closer to zero. But you can also go outward into infinity, which is the ultimate state of complexity, interconnectedness. It is like what Terence McKenna would have called I have the word, I know the word very, very well. Singularity at the end of time. The transcendental object at the end of time. He calls it many things. But that. It is after everything... I have an hourglass in my room, but it's magnetic at the bottom. So you have these metal beads. They fall through from the past to the present moment, and then they land. And when they land in a certain state. How things are after they have gone through the process of life, after becoming, after the present moment. And what the difference between the past and the future? Change. And so once they fall through, they stick and then they stay there. And so after 100 of these, 1,000 of these fall, you get this like cool magnetic structure. And so you could see that as like, and then you could take that and then put it into an hourglass of its own. Like that's a solidified structure along with thousands of other solidified structures like that. And they go through the present moment and they complexify. And that's exactly what everything is like. It always works on some sort of fractal level. I don't know how or why, but it does. But yeah, I'm very pleased. I've never been able to successfully get myself to talk this long, this well. Well, not never, but in a very long time. And so, thank you, God. Glory be to God. Always. Much love. I'm going to return to being a human. Thank you very much for listening to me.